In this video, Tom Kelly of Be Safe and I discuss the supplemental services that you need to be selling and what percentage of your business the supplemental services might make up, and why it's really critical that at the beginning of the year you plan and budget for the year so that you can hit your revenue goals. Part of hitting your revenue goals is selling supplemental services. So Tom spends a little bit of time showing some numbers and some example numbers. Please keep in mind they're example numbers, but they're an example number of what you might see when selling a core service such as lawn care, and what the supplemental services might be that go with that, and what percentage of revenue they might make up. So listen to Tom and I discuss this question.
At the beginning of the year, and when you're doing your budgeting and preparing for the following year, it's so important that you identify what those services are and you create goals for the services that you want to sell. And this particular worksheet, this is one where we talk about growing new sales. This is a budget that takes a new company from 0 customers to 450 customers. But these are the supplemental services that we're going to upsell. So the reason I want to do this is because I want to give you a little bit of an idea from my own experience what you can expect to sell if you do it the right way. So in a lawn care budget, not a maintenance budget, when we're selling lawn care fertilization services, we can plan to sell these supporting services: spring aeration, ant, flea, and tick control, grub control, limestone, fall aeration, and fall aeration with overseeding. If you'll notice, I don't have 50 different things here. I think you want to stay away from getting too scattered, and you want to deal with your core service and then your supporting services. So when I'm writing this particular budget or worksheet, I know that if I have round revenue in this case, and again, this is just an example. This isn't anything specific. If I have round revenue, which is my core service, my lawn fertilization service of $194,000, these percentages here are what I can expect my goal should be in terms of upselling. So I know that as long as I offer these services to my customers, and we'll talk about that in a minute too, I can expect 1% or less than 1% of my round revenue to come in as spring aeration. So if I'm doing round revenue of $194,000, I'll multiply that times 0.85 to get $1,600 in spring aeration. It's not a lot. In a lot of cases, you want to almost try to avoid spring aeration. But what you'll notice is the biggest one here, in my experience, is going to be preventative grub control. Preventative grub control is the one supplemental service, and again, I'm talking about fertilization services, that people over the years have really, truly come to expect that they have to offer. So I know many of you guys kind of included in your regular program. I don't think you should. It should be an optional service that you can sell in addition to your regular program. And these are my own historical data type numbers. I know that 13% of this number, or this number times 13%, will be $25,000 in grub control. So what I basically do when I set out to write my budget or my top line projections, and there's so much more that goes into this. This is really just a quick sort of overview of it. I know that grub control, or preventative grub control, is going to be my my biggest selling optional service. And in a case like this, I can expect $25,000 to come in from preventative grub control. Fall seeding is another big one too. And across the country last year was a horrible year in terms of weather. There's lots of damaged areas, drought, things like that. You want to try to avoid doing seeding in the springtime as much as you can, because more often than not you're going to have to redo it in the fall. So this number might even be a little bit higher this year. And when I say fall seeding, I'm talking about aeration and overseeding. So I know a lot of you guys often want to know exactly what to budget in terms of what to expect. And this is a good sort of indication that grub control is going to be a big one. Fall seeding is going to be a big one, and some of the other ones might be smaller, but they do add up. In a small operation like this, where we're only talking a couple $100,000 in revenue, almost $60,000 of it is going to come in from optional services. So, Jonathan, obviously, you know, at CityTurf and even with Service Autopilot, budgeting is a big part of the whole process. So why don't you give us your take on this?
No, I agree 100%, and I think there's two sides to this coin. One is when you sort of alluded to something. I think one, when you're a little bitty company just getting your feet off, you're just getting off the ground, and it's sort of you and maybe a helper or a couple helpers. You know, knowing these numbers, like you've given somewhat of a guide here, though not exact, but just knowing that, you know, there's two ways to look at this. One is, look how much additional revenue is here by selling a few of these extras. Not to mention, when you can do the fall over seeding or the seeding, you can really have the opportunity to make your client much happier. Like, you could fertilize their lawn all day long, but if they've got damage that fertilizer can't fix, well, you're never going to thrill them, and you're never going to get them talking about you, and they're never going to be ecstatic and want to refer you unless you solve the bigger problem, and you've got to thicken up and basically bring that lawn back. So there's other opportunities here in terms of offering these to really please and make your client very happy. The other thing, that's one takeaway, and again, as you said, look how much money would be left on the table had these numbers not been known and the individual with this business not gone off after these extras. Now, the second thing, though, that's completely kind of polar opposite that's interesting is when you are the only guy, or you're young in business, or you have a young team, you know, you're just building up the company, if you find that, for example, spring aeration is highly distracting, you don't own the equipment, you feel this need that you have to buy it instead of rent it, you don't really know how to do it, you don't know how to promote it, look at how little revenue that contributes. And so sometimes when you look at these numbers, you also look at them from the standpoint of thinking, we could stay out of this for another year or two, and we could stay completely focused on what matters most. And what matters most is grub control and fall seeding. And we're going to put all our energy and expertise into that. So I find that interesting, and I think those are a couple ways to look at it. I would say, too, on the maintenance business, there's a couple interesting things that I've observed over the years. So you said it correctly. Mowing tends to be a really good anchor service. It's a tremendous service, which a lot of guys don't like mowing, but it's a tremendous service to get your foot in the door and then take the services from all your competitors that are also serving that client. And there's a big move to be what it's been going on for years, to be a mow, blow, and go company where you just have a mowing business. And if you can build route density, then I think there's an argument against that strategy. But where I'm going with that is, if you look at mowing as your anchor to sort of mimic what you have here, what you would see in a maintenance business is you would see that a big percentage for us in our business, lawn care is number 2 behind mowing. It's huge. But then if you, forgetting lawn care, if you were to look at this same chart, you would have mowing as your anchor service, and then below that, your number 2 would probably be bush trimming. And then below that, you would have something like hand weeding the flower beds or pre-emerging the beds, which sort of gets into lawn care. But you would have some different services like that on the maintenance side. But I tend to find that bush trimming, in especially southern markets, tends to be one of those services that if you're competing head-to-head with another maintenance company and they only want to mow, and you're willing to mow and hand weed beds and trim the bushes, you can steal that business away all day long, every day. And so that, too, the reason I brought that up is that, too, points to this example here where you have your core service and then you have these additional add-ons. Sometimes offering the add-ons, even though they contribute a smaller percentage to revenue, is necessary. And it's important because that allows you then to secure the business from your client, especially if you're competing in the commercial world. So those are just a few observations that I see on this.